Hi, I'm Carrie. Welcome back to my channel. I spent an entire weekend binge watching the hashtag to romance tropes put out by Sylvie at Tarot Magpie. And I enjoyed those videos so much, I decided to jump on that train and participate too. The first prompt is enemies to lovers, a deck, style, or system you've insisted just wasn't for you until you realized that it was. And I'm going to go with a system for this question. And that is the decks that are just pips. I had one pip deck, which was the White Sage Tarot, and I just could not connect or read with that deck. And then I found this, and this is the Dream Visions Tarot, the first edition. This deck is my heart and soul, I swear. I love everything about this deck. I love the higher vibration that I get when I am interacting with this deck. And I love the beings that are on this deck because they have a higher vibration energy, at least in my experience in working with it. So back to the whole pip thing. As soon as I saw this, where I had such trouble with the White Sage Tarot, and then I look at this Three of Coins, and you can see the beings all connecting into one another, wrapping around those coins, working together in collaboration. It just immediately clicked with me. And I saw the pips in a completely different way. The nine of swords, and that, piercing the top of the head. It just was a whole different experience to read pips in this perspective than in the original deck that I tried to use to read pips. The fact that this is so colorful, I think that impacts my reading with it also. I really do enjoy the muted or soft, not muted, it's not muted, the softer color palette of it, but yet it feels vibrant to me at the same time. Maybe it's the energy that comes through it that has that vibrancy to it, but I just adore this, and I appreciate that it made me look at pips in a different manner because I had written them off altogether. I didn't want anything to do with them until I got my hands on this deck, and then that led me to picking up the Fifth Spirit Tarot, which I love that one too. I could have showcased that one also, but I wanted to show this one, which I've shown on here before, that really shifted my perspective in working with a pip deck, and what I could really learn with it, and the minimalism of it all. So the second prompt, friends to lovers, a deck you liked well enough and then one reading deepened or changed your relationship with it. And I could have shown several different decks for this, but it's all the same style, and that is the traditional RWS images. I could have showed my Rider deck or my Radiant Rider Waite, or even the Wiser Tarot. But it was really this deck, which is the Divine in Play Tarot, that really made me love the RWS images. I have a bunch of clones. The RWS system is the one I like to use. It's one that I own a ton of decks in. I don't really follow the other systems, and so, but I was never really drawn to the traditional RWS images. But I slowly started having an appreciation for them, which then made me start working especially the Radiant, I think it's the Radiant RWS into some readings. But when I got this one on these playing cards, and it's a linen cardstock, I enjoyed working with this deck so much. It sat out for months, and I would just pull it and or shuffle it and pull it on a regular basis almost every evening. And that really made me, like I said, have a greater love and appreciation for the traditional cards. So this is a perfect size. It's a poker deck size. It's easy to, take with me anywhere if I really wanted to. I like that if I wanted to use it as a playing card deck, I could, but or read with it in the playing card deck style instead of the RWS style if I wanted to. So this is my friends to lovers choice because this is the deck that pushed me over the edge of really loving the images to that system. Prompt 3 is forced proximity, a deck you used for a month, took on holiday, or made yourself work with that changed your relationship with it. And for that one, I picked the Tarot of the Enchanted Soul. So this was an impulse buy. So I could have stuck that in that category. But I did actually have to force myself to use it because it was so large and it was so cumbersome to try to handle the deck. I mean, as you can see, turned on its side, it's very thick. It's very, very thick. It's even trimmed down. It's still not very shuffleable for me. I could take more off of it if I wanted to, but I chose to leave the words on there. This is not your traditional RWS pictures. It's not a clone. It kind of goes its own way as far as the images go, but I feel like you can see what needs to be seen as far as what the meanings of the cards are in these pictures, and I really enjoyed that. So I ended up using this deck for an entire year in conjunction with the Ancestral Grimoire book, and I worked through each exercise every month using this deck. Every once in a while I might pull in another deck to use with it, but this was the primary one that was used every single month for a year. So I developed a great appreciation for this deck, even though it's clunky and large and difficult to shuffle. It's beautiful. It is, I mean, look at this King of Coins. It's just gorgeous. The images on it are so lovely. And like I said, even though they're not your traditional RWS images, they give you enough of what the meanings are, which I've already said. I'm just repeating myself now. I mean, the strength card, and it talks in the guidebook. That's another thing. The guidebook with this deck is beautiful. And so it talks about this dragon and the courage that this hummingbird has to hover right here by this dragon to represent the strength card. Oh my gosh, it really is a great deck, especially like when you read the guidebook with it. And I know a lot of people decluttered this deck and let it go, and I could not imagine letting this go because there's just, I think there's a lot to work with here. So it holds a special place now. So the next prompt is soulmates, when it was just meant to be, a deck that you fell in love with immediately. So I easily fall in love. I'll just say that first. I have love at first sight with many of the decks that I have. I am a, a lover of many, I guess. But I could have picked several decks for this soulmate. I mean, first off, I would have picked Light Seers. Light Seers is like my tried and true, I love you, you're never going anywhere deck. Oh my gosh. I could have picked one of my Halloween decks. I could have picked several different style decks for this. So one of my soulmates, as I have many, is The Influence of the Angels Tarot by Jody Baginski Barbesi, and I love this so much. I didn't have to do a big deck study with it. I didn't have to use it and get the feel of it. It was an immediate connection between me and this deck. I really do like this art, and I already have a walkthrough on my channel where I compared this deck to two of Cat Black decks, the Touchstone Tarot and the Golden Tarot. And they're all very similar. They are all very, very similar to one another. I enjoy this guidebook so much because it talks about the symbolism in the deck. It talks about the direct message, and then it gives you a shadow message, but then it gives you an angelic message on top of that. If you've been here for longer than a minute, you know that I worked in angel energy a lot many, many years ago. I still work with angel energy, but I worked with it heavily years ago. So this deck is very fitting to have in my collection, and it doesn't surprise me that I connected to it so quickly because of the angelic energy, I guess, that is embedded, I guess, in this deck. If you look, there's a little angel on each card somewhere, like it's right there, there, and there. So there's, each card has an angel in it in some form or fashion. But this is, I think it's Renaissance style artwork, and I really do like that type of art. So this was like a no-brainer. I would never use this deck to read for anyone else. This is just special to me. Like, I use the Touchstone to read for others. I've used, I don't think I've used the Golden Tarot to read for others, but this one I've saved just personally for me because of my easy connection to this deck and artwork. The next prompt is a slow burn, a deck you didn't have the best first impression of, but the more you worked with it, the more you liked it. And that would go to my pocket edition of the Crow Tarot. I will say over and over, oh, I don't like animal decks. I don't like animal decks. Animal decks aren't my thing, but yet I own at least half a dozen animal decks. So I really need to stop saying that, first off. I had gone back and forth about purchasing the full-size edition because I have a cousin who has that edition and has shared cards with me of readings that he's done for himself, and I'm like, wow, that is so intense and profound. But yet then I would stare and look at the card and think, that it doesn't do anything for me. It's just a bunch of crows on a card in different scenes. And I hesitated for the longest time, but when the pocket edition came out, and I thought, it's not expensive, it's small, it won't take up much space, that way if I don't like it, it's easy to tuck away somewhere. And the exact opposite. As I started working with it more and playing around with it, I really started connecting to those images here on this deck. However, it was when I was prepping for a mediumship reading and I pulled out this deck and used it, and I talk about this in another video, and the way that Spirit spoke to me through these crow images were just on another level. And then after I did that reading, I decided to go ahead and pull this out and do some quick readings with it to see if it still spoke to me in the same way, where I wasn't using it to like pull through spirit or anything. And of course it did. And I can really connect with, you know, what is happening on the cards, even though it is the crow or crows, depending on what's happening on the images. So I surprised myself really by warming up to this deck, because I didn't think that that was going to be a possibility. But yeah, it's a favorite now. The next prompt, opposites attract. This deck is not your usual style, but you love it anyway. This deck is a week old in my collection. And I had to showcase it for this, because this deck is nowhere near my aesthetic. And that is the Tarot Landscapes. This deck is so far out of my comfort zone. I don't even know where my comfort zone is with this deck. I like decks with people. I like to read off of the expressions of people and the activities that they are doing in the images of the cards, or how it's depicted and what that brings to me in my readings. And this has none of that. There's no people. Yes, there's some animals, but there's no people. And I hear this deck compared a lot to the Tarot of Oneness. But for me personally, I do not feel that this is exactly like the Tarot of Oneness, because the Tarot of Oneness pulls you into the card and into the act that is happening on the card. It pulls you into the person that you are the one stepping across the stone, that you are the one wielding the sword, or whatever the image may be. With this deck, I don't feel pulled in like I do in the Tarot of Oneness. I still see myself as a spectator when looking at this deck. And I mean, because I don't see myself, I'm not the rock, I'm looking at the rock. I'm not, it doesn't even show like feet where you're stepping forward towards the rock. So you're not part of the action, you're just a spectator to the image. And like in the Tarot of Oneness, here's a perfect example. In the Tarot of Oneness, I think there is something with a seagull that makes you look like you're part of that. And this where you're just like a spectator to it. So it's different in that way for me. And so I didn't think I would connect to this because of the lack of people and the lack of participating action, I guess, like the Tarot of Oneness has. But I used this deck probably almost every day since I got it in some way, either pulling just a single card, or I'll talk in my other video, my wrap-up video for the month. I've been using it with a walk through the Forest of Souls, and holy moly, have those readings been impactful. So I think it's nice to have a deck that challenges you in that way and isn't the same old what you're used to. And when I say this takes me out of that comfort zone, it really does. So I'm very interested to see where this deck is going to take me, where our journey is going to go with one another, because it's so different for me. And I'm really looking forward to that. So, and I know this is like been talked about a lot. The Tarot of, I almost called it the Tarot of Oneness. The Tarot Landscapes has been used and talked about a lot in the past month or so. I've seen it in a lot of people's videos. So I'm really anxious to see how we are going to speak to each other as we move further along in our journey with one another. So, but yes, this is a definite opposites attract. So the next prompt is blind date, an impulse buy, a gift or a deck you got without much research but ended up really loving it. That would be the Modern Love Tarot by Ethany. I adore this deck. I love this deck. I had to stop myself. Well, let me get it out of the box. I had to actually stop myself from using it because I was pulling this deck out for anything and everything just so I could work with it. This deck was never on my radar at all. I didn't really have an interest in it. And then I don't know what happened. It was this past February. This is another one that's really newer to my collection. This past February, showed up in what is that, Valentine's Day deck tag or something along those lines. And I was like, wow, that's cute. I didn't watch any more walkthroughs of it. I didn't study up on it. I didn't do any of that. I just went right to the website and I purchased it. And I thought I was going to have buyer's remorse because I didn't watch a lot of videos on it, but it was the exact opposite. It was like, where have you been my whole life? Is how I felt about this deck once I got it in. And even though the guidebook talks about like the relationship aspect of the cards and that, I use this for any and every kind of reading, and it has been a wonderful, wonderful reader. And sometimes I feel like we get so hung up on our decks having to be in a certain category or for a certain thing, and I can only pull this deck out at Valentine's Day, or I can only pull this deck out when I want to do a love or relationship reading. And we box our decks in and we miss that opportunity to see what else the deck can teach us, what else the deck has to say to us, because this deck talks a lot. It is a chatty Cathy and will give me a lot in a reading with minimal cards. So a very fast favorite, and I'm so glad that I did an impulse buy of it because it is an absolute treasure to my collection. So the next prompt is Second Chance, a deck you plan to get rid of that worked its way back into rotation, or a deck you did move along and ended up repurchasing. I don't move my decks along. I don't repurchase decks. So I will set a deck aside, even if it has to sit somewhere for a year or more, and then try to work with it again and so on. I won't get rid of it because you never know when is going to be the right time for you in a certain deck. So that deck is Tarot de la Nuit that I have given a second chance to. I despised this deck when I got it, and that's the honest to God's truth. I let myself be influenced by a video, and I thought, wow, if that deck works for them like that, it'll work for me like that. And I got it, and I looked through it, and I was like, what the hell did you just do? Why did you purchase this? All I can say is thank God it was mass market and it was on a Llewellyn sale and it was super duper cheap, because I would have been probably really upset if I would have paid a lot of money for this. This is the Beautiful People deck. I think this is the only Beautiful People deck that I own, maybe. And so it wasn't doing anything for me. The images are so dark in it. I just wish they were lightened up just a little bit. And some of the images don't do anything for me. I mean, they really don't. However, the guidebook is quite enjoyable. So it's a low scarabeo guidebook though, so it has a lot of other languages in it. But here, I'm just going to give like the Three of Wands. As bold as I am is the title underneath the Three of Wands. Do the skull and the wand I hold scare you? They shouldn't. You're strong enough to face them. They only destroy those who are not well prepared and not motivated enough to persist. I wish they would have put, each one of these cards has like a title like right underneath of it. And I think that would have been so great if they would have put those titles like underneath or above or something of the cards, because it would just be an added layer. It would be something else. And I've thought about possibly writing my own titles on here, but it's, oh my God, it's so dark. I don't think that I would. So when I decided to take it out and to start using it, I used it for guidance 1 month in my little membership group, and it gave the best guidance. But here's something I noticed about the cards. Like this one is super smooth, and then this one has this, I don't know, like a gritty feeling to it. I don't know what is going on with the cardstock of this deck. It's confusing. But I did end up enjoying the guidance. In the long way around the bush here, I did end up enjoying the guidance that I got from this deck that I posted for members. That's where the second chance of it came in, and I need to work with it a little bit more to get a better feel of the deck. And like I said, I think this deck could be so much more if they would have added those additional titles onto the cards or something, because the guidebook is, even though it's very small, since it's, you know, low scarabeo, it does have some nice messages in there for these images that really makes the images make sense as far as what I feel anyway. So the next prompt is the unrequited love category. You really want to love this deck, but it just doesn't love you back yet. Terror of the Abyss by Anna Turian. I want to love this deck so much. I don't want to say that this deck doesn't like me, but we don't get along right now. That's not to say we won't get along later, but no, we don't. We don't get along at all. I don't know if this is pen drawing. I don't know exactly what this is. I knew at one time, but it's been a while since I purchased this deck. And yeah, we just don't jive with one another. I want to so badly. I don't even like the readings that I get from it. I said something, I think, completely differently when I first got it. But the more I worked with it, the more the distance grew between me and this deck. I don't know if it's the lack of color that's my problem. I've seen where people have colored the images in just like spot places, not like through the whole entire thing. I thought about doing that. I don't think I can do it though, because if I screw it up, then I definitely won't want to use the deck. So I'm in a space of limbo with this deck of not wanting to pull it out to use it at all. So we're just taking a break from one another for right now. And there might come a time or a place where when I'm thinking of a reading to do, that this is the deck that says, yes, use me. and I pull it out and we end up bonding. But for right now, that's not happening between us, and that's okay. It can just go in the cabinet until it's ready to speak to me. So the last prompt is love triangle, 2 decks that compete with each other in your collection, or a pair of decks you will always use together. And I am going to show a pair of decks that I will always use together. This is a brand new pairing for me. A brand new pairing as in like a week's worth of using these 2 decks together. And you're probably thinking, well, then how can you choose these 2? Because these will be bonded now. I have other decks that I feel are bonded together, but after using Tarot for the Great Outdoors and the Sacred Destiny Oracle for some readings, I did a bunch of client readings with these 2 decks, and oh my gosh, I don't even know, the synchronicity between these 2 decks was magical, to say the least. And when something like that happens, and it happens so quickly, especially first time pairing them together, then I know that that's the pair that needs to happen. So I'm not hesitant in talking about this for this category, because I know that these 2 decks will always work together. And if you just look at the coloring as I'm flipping through the cards, you can see how well that's compatible with each other also. And I like the fact that this is white, has the white border, and I like that this is no border. And I think that really helps them bond, if that makes sense at all. Because I think if you took the images away, maybe it would feel like too overwhelming or something. That's my thought process. You know, the Tarot for the Great Outdoors I've had since fall. I think I picked it up in the fall, and so I haven't used it. I'm getting ready to deep dive it with a friend and fellow tarot tuber, and we're going to use it for an entire month, and I'm really looking forward to that. Something that actually put me off from using the tarot for the Great Outdoors is the cardstock, and I don't consider myself a cardstock snob, so for it to put me off from using it, I really had to like force myself to want to, you know, pull this out and work with it. And then guess what? After I did these readings with it, that cardstock means nothing to me now. It is fantastic. The guidebook for this deck, yes, the little guidebook. The little guidebook for this deck is fantastic. It's just, this is a great pairing. I don't know what else to say about it besides that. When 2 decks just speak in that manner with one another, it really enhances the experience of the decks. So, and Sacred Destiny Oracle has been a favorite of mine from 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was the big thing on TarotTube. Everybody was talking about it, using it, showing it, showcasing it, and then it just went away. And you never heard anything about it anymore. And I just think that's because so much comes out. But this is a treasure. So, yeah. If you have these 2 decks, try pairing them together, because they're just beautiful. And like I said, I mean, look at the coloring together. Look, Emperor, and I didn't even notice that, Emperor and Leadership. I mean, come on. Wheel of Fortune and Standstill. Knight of Vessels, which is the Knight of Cups. Healing Chaos. Seven of Stones, 7 of Pentacles, and Abundance. They're just, oh, they're so good. They're so good. You know, oh my gosh, look at these. Look at these 2 images. of sticks and opportunity. I mean, really. If you do, please, if you have these two, try them together and let me know in the comments if you've tried them together and how you like them, because I'll quit saying it, but yeah, they're too good to not try with one another. So that is it. That is all the prompts and that is all the decks. Thank you again to Sylvie at Tarot Magpie for creating this tag. And thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate you being here. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more from me. And until I see you next time, bye.